I'm also looking at some interesting markets that I think could be up and coming: Egypt, Uzbekistan. So those are markets that I think are great values.
And you
Go
better
over
speak
how
the local
that
language.
works and kind of maybe the opportunities that you've seen with
Yeah.
real estate in all these countries that are a lot less efficient than the United States.
I think they're almost all less efficient, and it can be intimidating. But I think sometimes people are looking for a free lunch, right? I mean, I've gotten pretty spoiled with the relatively low cost of living, and I'm not a guy seeking a low cost of living. I just enjoy that you go to a nice restaurant and it costs a lot less than it would in the U.S. But with this, there was a period of adjustment to realizing not everything is different. There's still things I wish were a bit more like the United States, and there's still things I wish the United States were like other places. But there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of money to be saved. Now, my clientele that I talk to, they're making from $500,000 a year up to $50 million a year. They have net worths from whatever up to billions. So I mean, I'm not. I'm speaking to someone for whom just making the move, you'll save millions of dollars in the first couple of years just in taxes, let alone cost of living savings. So for me, I have a friend who runs a business in Cambodia buying properties. He just hires local people. It's $300-400 a month is a very good salary there, I think now, and they're just calling these for sale signs, and that's how they find apartment buildings for $800 a meter in the middle of the city, in the middle of the capital city, Phnom Penh. And he set up a Cambodian company. People can buy into it because it's hard to own property, or pretty much impossible now to own individual properties like that as a foreigner. But he can own them in this company. And so there was some footwork setting up, but I mean, his returns now are, I think, pretty good for a really core, grade A property. Colombia is the same thing. And this is something that we do in our business, where I tell people bring me, I'll say, hey, let's do your Colombian residence. And they'll bring me some property, and I'll say, that's 40% too much, because they went to the American guy. Let me be the white guy who goes in fronts with the agents we found on the ground, because you're right. If it's online, you're probably paying too much.
And if it's in English.
Oh, if it's in English, you're dead. We've talked about this. We've talked about, should we have a service that just helps people only, you don't want the passport, you don't want the bank, you just want the real estate. I think it's worth people, paying some money to get that help. But, whether other people agree, I don't know. But it is a very opaque market in many cases.
Yeah. What are your favorite real estate markets right now around the
I think
world?
Colombia is interesting. Obviously, the peso is a bit of a concern, but I feel relatively comfortable with Colombia. I think that in Asia, Cambodia is probably the last market that I'm watching. I think it's the one. I think Georgia got a little expensive for my taste. I think it's starting to come back. I'm also looking at some interesting markets that I think could be up and coming: Egypt, Uzbekistan. So those are markets that I think are great values. We could certainly talk about markets that hold their value, markets that are good for rental potential. But those are some that I think.
Montenegro, didn't you?
I do have a home in Montenegro. With any.
I was there in 2014, and I actually put in a couple offers there right around the other side of the bay from Old Town Kotor.
Yeah.
And I didn't get anything accepted, but I was looking at Croatia and Montenegro back then. I talk about them all the time. I really I loved them back then. I don't know if they've gone up in value since then. Or if they're a little
Everything in Europe,
overpriced now.
yeah. I mean, I remember being in Budapest, Hungary back in 13, and it was just take your pick. Dubai, even a little bit before that, everyone was jumping from the windows. And now a lot of those markets have come back up. Montenegro's not cheap. I have a place there. Listen, if you're buying on the sea, there's certainly some potential, but I don't think it's as strong, because anyone can manufacture a new sea. If I'm looking at the best value seaside investment in the midterm, I'm going to go down to Albania. I mean, it's incredible. It's dirt cheap. It's pathetically cheap. Now, I don't really want to go and spend my time there, so I'm choosing to make a lifestyle investment. I own a property in Malaysia. I think capital appreciation here will be very low, probably for the next 7 to 10 years. But I'm making a lifestyle investment, and I want to own my own property and customize it to what I want as a small part of my net worth. those markets, I think, are places where you can do that. You can enjoy yourself, and I think they will hold their value, and potentially they'll give you other residence or citizenship benefits. But resort areas.
Yeah, so it really depends on what you're looking for as far as lifestyle or ROI, specifically cash flow, appreciation. It's kind of like the States in that way. You got to look around for the specific, we call them cyclical markets or linear markets, hybrid markets, something like that. But the bottom line is there's tons of opportunity out there for people who are interested in investing in real estate, especially now if you're worried about fiat currency and devaluation of currency, getting your net worth into a hard asset that will most likely keep pace with inflation is always a smart decision. At the beginning of the podcast, or at the beginning of the interview, we talked about Act 20 and 22. I went there in Puerto Rico in 2013, 14, something like that, for Act 20 and 22. And I know that you like it for some people, but it's kind of not right for others. What's your professional opinion on Puerto Rico? And I think it's called Act 60 now.
There's a whole bunch of them, yeah. They made it more difficult. There's a donation you have to pay. You have to buy real estate now after a couple of years. If you are the kind of person that's in our sweet spot, if you're the seven-figure entrepreneur, I mean, it certainly makes sense because you can go there and you can pay nothing on your capital gains. You can pay in the single digits on your income. Now, there are, again, whenever you're dealing with the U.S. or its territories, you've got some caveats and how you run the business and how that's set up. And I think people think there's no rules. I had a guy recently who's looking to sell his business. He's owned this business for 20 years, and he was asking about moving to Puerto Rico and holding it for 3 more years and then selling it to take advantage of this 0% capital gains. I said, no. You will get 0% for 3 of the 23 years. So 3 20/3 are at 0. The rest are as they were. And so, if I'm starting a brand new business, I'm planning a quick exit, that's the kind of person, maybe you're planning on expatriating from the U.S. at some point, that kind of person may be a good person to go there initially. But if you run a long-term business, or if you have a business that's got tentacles all over the place, or if you just don't want all the hassle, you've got to be there. I like what you mentioned, the foreign earned income exclusion. Now, I just personally don't like the U.S. To me, Puerto Rico I'm afraid to leave the U.S., so this is like the furthest I can get away. By the way, if you're a trader and you want to do it, that's fine. I do have some day traders and stuff like that. Most because I did renounce my U.S. citizenship. I think more people who come to me come because they want help on that route, getting the second passport and expatriating. But, for me, why not have the flexibility? You take this foreign earned income exclusion. There's 2 different methods you can use. Either one of them is going to give you less time in the U.S. than a Puerto Rico move is, but it's going to give you fewer restrictions for the other time that you're not in the U.S. And for me, there's just so many places to see to not be stuck on one island.
Yeah, I think there's something there with Puerto Rico. If you're there for the first year, after that, you still qualify to be a quote-unquote bona fide resident as long as you don't spend X amount of time in the United States. So you've got a little bit more flexibility there, but that could have changed.
There's a number of tests you have to pass. I mean, and that's the thing that people don't understand. Same thing with the Australians you mentioned earlier, right? People here, and I hear it all the time, I don't know what to do to tell people it's not the case. If you want to become that non-tax resident of a country like Australia or Canada, whatever, people think, all I need to do is spend fewer than 183 days, because that's the days test, they call it. Well, no. That's one of 3 or 4 or 5 tests in some cases. So you can pass that one with flying colors, but it might be the domicile test or the permanent place of abode, or there's any number of other tests that these different countries have. In Europe, a lot of countries, center of life. Where's your center of life? You could spend 4 months there potentially. What is your profile? You could be sucked in. And so same with Puerto Rico. There's multiple tests.
It's sucked into their tax system. So that's the key, right?
I had a guy who was on a tourist visa in the United States, and he had an actual B1, B2 sticker visa. He's a British guy, if I recall correctly. And you can spend 6 months as a British guy if you get the sticker in your passport. And what he didn't realize is there's a certain threshold when even as a tourist, you could theoretically be sucked into U.S. taxation. So these Western countries, they're not messing around. There's all kinds of ways. If you have employees, there's all kinds of ways you or your business can be sucked in. So, I don't really speak to the corner cutting too much. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number one, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number two, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number three, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number four, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.